This is the most sold car in America in 2023, and this is the most sold car in Europe the same year. This is the large McDonald's cup in the US, and this is the large cup from McDonald's in the UK. This is the average new home size in the US, and this is the average home size in Europe. Clearly, there's a pattern here. When non-Americans visit the US for the first time or watch American TV, they're often shocked by the proportions of the American lifestyle. Food portion sizes, cars, roads, malls, houses, stuff tends to be a bit larger than in the rest of the world, sometimes a lot larger. Where does this obsession with bigness come from? Why is everything so big in the United States, and how does it affect Americans? To understand America's culture of big, we first have to look at the country's history. The United States started as a frontier nation with abundant natural resources and room for expansion. The vast and sprawling land, full of natural resources, promised infinite possibilities. European settlers found so much more land and natural resources than they had known in the crowded continents from which they came. Even with the exponential growth in the American population, the crowded big cities, and the packed events, if you zoom out just a little, you'll realize how empty the country still is. In the aftermath of World War II, the post-war economic boom was a period of unprecedented growth and prosperity in the United States. With the war over and the economy thriving, the American dream was born. The large family, suburban house, white picket fence, and the American-made car. During this economic growth, there was an explosion in consumer goods production. The admired suburban lifestyle gave birth to a unique car culture, and the car grew to represent personal freedom and status. The scale of everything increased. Bigger houses with sprawling lawns, larger cars with room for the whole family, and a greater variety of consumer products available in ever-increasing quantities. The size and scale of things in America didn't just reflect its geography and resources, they became emblematic of its national identity and a symbol of success. Americans love big cars. In the United States, the market for big cars is bigger than any other market in the world. In Europe, city cars, subcompact, and compact cars made about 35% of the sales. These same three segments made less than 10% of sales in the US. When your top three best-selling vehicles in the US are pickup trucks, it's pretty clear that this type of car is not exclusive to farmers and tradesmen. But this obsession with big cars has a deep-rooted history. In the 50s, the truck guy image started to gain public attention, with convincing TV commercials emphasizing the rigidness and strength of the new truck models. Car manufacturers managed to add a few new models to their fleet. But for many years, trucks remained exclusively used in transporting goods until an unusual event happened, an event that would change the American automobile industry forever. The 1973 OPEC embargo. Here's what happened in a nutshell. Middle Eastern oil-producing countries get into a conflict with Israel. Nixon backs Israel. Arab countries stop selling oil to America, and oil prices go through the roof. This resulted in the first oil shortage in American history. People gathered in gas stations, businesses were heavily impacted, and roads started to look empty. For the first time, Americans started to hear more of the words fuel efficiency. Consumers started shifting more towards smaller cars that didn't cost much to fuel up. However, this resulted in more trucks being sold. The whole OPEC embargo only lasted a few months, but it led the way for government regulations on fuel consumption. In 1975, the US government passed the Energy Policy and Conservation Act. As of 1978, car manufacturers were forced to build smaller cars, but not smaller trucks. You see, the new regulations only applied to passenger cars, while sedans had to undergo various changes to satisfy the CAFE, corporate average fuel economy. Those who were in the truck business were free to build whatever they wanted. Even with expensive gas prices, Americans were still loyal to their bigness addiction. And when gas prices were no longer a problem in the 80s, small car owners were no longer forced to have smaller cars. Since then, the dominance of trucks and SUVs has been reflected in car sales. Light trucks continued to get bigger and bigger along with America's obsession with size. Since the mid-90s, pickup trucks on average increased by over 1,000 pounds. This obsession with big cars is not just a harmless preference, this has serious consequences on American lives, literally. In the event of a crash, a 1,000-pound increase in weight increases the chance of a fatality by 40 to 50%. Researchers have found that some trucks have front blind spots that are 11 feet longer than most sedans. One study found that replacing the growth in SUVs and trucks with smaller cars would have averted 1,100 deaths between 2000 and 2019. When hit by an SUV or a truck, pedestrians are hit in more vulnerable body parts than when hit by a compact or a sedan. The US is unlikely to become a small car country anytime soon. In addition to American car culture, policy plays a huge role in incentivizing car manufacturers to continue to produce bigger and bigger cars. But cars aren't the only thing that's overly exaggerated in size. Remember this show? This was the ultimate manifestation of American consumerism when it comes to houses. While European real estate shows were showcasing more of an artistic, architectural approach to their homes and buildings, Americans were deeply fascinated by the extravagant homes of the rich. The multiple bedroom houses, the high ceilings, the long driveways, the ridiculous square footage. For some reason, American culture has always associated the size of someone's home with how successful they are. The craving for more space and more luxury is driven not just by comfort or utility, but by the desire to project an image of prosperity and to feel secure within that prosperity. Over the past few decades, American home size has been steadily increasing. In 1970, the average home was 1,500 square feet and rose to almost 2,500 square feet just before the recession in 2008. There's a common belief that the reason behind large American homes is the abundance of land in the country. After all, the US is bigger than multiple European countries combined. Although this is true, it's not the main reason. Russia is a big country, Kazakhstan's a big country, Brazil, Algeria. Space itself doesn't make people do one thing or another. Government policies, however, do. The US government has for the past century effectively steered Americans toward living in detached, single-family homes, the formal term for a prototypical standalone house with a lawn. Over the 20th century, government policy, the invention of cheaper, mass-produced building materials, and marketing by home builders, Americans' view of homes shifted from places of residency to financially appreciating assets. It's quite unclear precisely how the interconnection of economics, culture, history, technology, and politics helps to produce large houses, but for the most part, Americans continue building and living in big houses because they simply can, whereas Europeans can't do the same for the simple reason of not having any more room for expansion. The influence of policies on the American big culture didn't stop at the automobile and housing industries. It has also tremendously affected the food industry, which lobbied for regulations that make it more cost-effective to serve larger portions, leading to the supersizing trend in fast food chains. The new abnormal. Today, the average restaurant meal in the US is more than 4 times larger than in the 1950s. Pizza, burgers, fries, you name it. On the other side of the Pacific, portions stayed pretty much the same, but the difference between the US and Europe portions is huge. This expansion in food quantities didn't get any fightback from Americans. On the contrary, new trends and popular events have emerged. Food eating championships, the rise of mukbangs, unqualified food critics, cooking shows, and the list goes on. While in Europe, popular food shows revolve around sophisticated cuisine, in the US, things are different. With the continuous fast food chain openings and the introduction of new menu items non-stop, a whole new sector of the media industry was born, and Americans are loving it. Subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.